Hi, welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this episode, I am going to show you my 4 basic burn strokes. I can use these burn strokes alone or layer them up to create numerous different textures. I'm going to start the video by explaining what the basic burn strokes are and how to create them. Then I will provide examples of when and why I use them. After that, I will show you some examples where I layered the burn strokes. So let's get started. Uniform strokes. Uniform strokes is nothing more than creating a burn stroke that is consistent in color from the start to the end of the burn stroke. To get the best results, burn so that you are pulling the pen tip down towards yourself instead of pushing it up and away. The screen is showing this burn stroke being created by several different shaders. The reason is that I want to emphasize you can use any shader for this. In fact, a number of different pen tips will work for this burn stroke, including this writer pen tip. The major difference between all of the different pen tips is the size of the burn stroke that they produce. Uniform strokes examples. Uniform strokes is the burn method to use when you need ultra-smooth, uniform color. Over the years, I have learned that I get much more consistent and smoother results by slowly building up the color instead of trying to do it in one burn. This is especially true when burning on watercolor paper like I am doing with this Ford Buick artwork. One of my most common uses for uniform strokes is to give an area a base layer of color, like this background on the tiger. Since it's a base layer, I'm not worried about it being perfect. Later on, I will layer other burn strokes over this to give the background texture. Circular motion. Circular motion is literally burning a chain of circles. Like all of my burn strokes, circular motion can be created with any shader. An example of open circular motion is the first burn patch. You can see gaps between the lines of the circular motion. This is done by holding the pen tip at an angle so that there isn't much metal in contact with the wood. Reduce the angle that you're holding the pen tip and you reduce the amount of the gap. It shouldn't be a surprise that you can use other pen tips, like this writer pen tip, to create circular motion burn strokes. Circular motion examples. Circular motion is my go-to burn stroke on any rounded or fluffy texture that I want to create. The mist or the fog on this lake is a good example of that. The main reason I pick circular motion is because it doesn't tend to create lines. Plus, it is easy to get a range of tonal variety, and this is needed for mist, fog, or clouds. I also used circular motion to create the vague, distant foliage in this artwork. In fact, I often use circular motion to create foliage and deciduous trees, like the maple trees in this artwork. I don't have the video files anymore, so you're stuck with a picture. I use a lot of circular motion on portraits because it doesn't tend to create lines, and it's great for creating smooth transitions, especially on irregular shapes. When I am using circular motion for portraits, I am trying to produce a more uniform color that gets gradually lighter or darker as needed. I prefer circular motion over uniform strokes in this case because the tonal values on the face change a lot and many of the shapes have a rounded appearance, like the cheek, chin, and bulby nose. Another application for circular motion is creating out-of-focus effects. For example, I'm working on the fur and background behind the dog's right ear. The edges need to be very soft and the shapes vague. This will convey being out of focus. This process is the same as what would be used for creating clouds or mist. Pull-away strokes. Pull-away strokes start darker than they end, so they are used when you need gradient shading. You always start the stroke on the dark edge and pull it towards the light end. I primarily use pull-away strokes in areas that aren't very large and ones that have a clearly defined edge. I put the C Writer pen tip to the right of all the shaders on the screen. Pull-away strokes examples. One of the most common uses I have for pull-away strokes is to give objects a rounded appearance. The Celtic knot on this harp is an example of that. As you can see, I start the burn stroke on the outer edge of the object. This is where the color is darkest. And I pull the pen tip towards the center, where the color is lightest. And this gives the knot a rounded or 3D appearance. I used pull-away strokes on both the median and primary covert feathers on the bald eagle's wing. This was done to give the feathers a slight curved appearance and create some gradient shading. The maple leaves on this guitar body were created using pull-away strokes. The strokes radiate outward from the vein lines. I deliberately varied the color of some of the burn strokes to add a little tonal variety to the leaves. I chose pull-away strokes for this because I like how it looks and it's one of my favorite burn strokes to do. I burned a lot of pull-away strokes on this dog. The short fur below the eyes received a layer of pull-away strokes along the top and bottom edges of the fur. This made the fur look like it had a slight curve. Some of the burn strokes were wide and others were thin. This variety created hair texture. Each of the individual curling locks of hair received pull-away strokes along the base and the end of each lock. This is what gave the locks their curling appearance. Zigzag strokes. Zigzags are continuous lines that are burned in an up-down or left-right direction. The lines are shaped more like bolts of lightning versus a stitch line made from a sewing machine. The look or thickness of the zigzag can change depending on the angle you hold the pen tip. Hold it at a steep angle so you're using the razor edge, and you'll get very thin lines. As you decrease the angle, the lines thicken up. Zigzags can be created with other pen tips, like this C Writer pen tip. Zigzag examples. Zigzags are my preferred burn stroke to replicate fur texture. The texture requires several layers of zigzags to be burned to create the depth and realism of the fur. I have numerous tutorials that go into this process in greater detail. Another application for zigzags is to create the look of choppy water. I've used this technique on a number of small lakes I've had in various artworks. I think the horizontal zigzag creates a wonderful texture of moving water that has numerous highlights and shadows. I also use zigzags to create distant evergreen trees. I like to start at the top of the tree and work my way to the bottom, burning zigzag lines that get gradually longer in length. Each zigzag line is shaped more like a bolt of lightning versus a sewing machine zigzag stitch. I think that the zigzags create a wonderful random branch texture that has little gaps here and there, just like real trees do. Combination examples. With this black rabbit, I burn in small sections of fur using uniform strokes. Then I apply pull-away strokes along the ends of each section. The darker edges combined with a paler center will make the section of fur look curved. Varying the width of the burn strokes creates individual locks of fur, giving the section much-needed hair texture. With this dog's nose, I used either circular motion or uniform strokes to give it color and texture. The uniform strokes gives the nose a base color, and the circular motion darkens the color and provides a subtle texture. The last thing I do is stipple over the nose to give it a slight bumpy texture. If you're unfamiliar with the term stippling, that just means to apply a layer of dots. I start out by burning pull-away strokes along the outer edge of this heart. Each stroke starts on the edge and gets pulled towards the center of the heart. This creates gradient shading along the edge. Then I use uniform strokes to fill the center of the heart with smooth, seamless color. Afterwards, I burn over the seam where the pull-away strokes end with circular motion to darken and smooth out the transition between the pull-away and uniform strokes. The face on this steampunk fish began with an open circular motion burn stroke. This means there are gaps in the loops so the underlying wood can be seen. A medium ball tip was used to create the circular motion, but a rider pin tip would work also. Once the circular motion was in place, I used the flat of the shader and burned over the area using either uniform strokes or more circular motion. This was done to darken up some of the gaps created with the first layer of circular motion. Experimenting. I highly encourage you to experiment with layering burn strokes for two reasons. First, you'll learn more about the pin tip's capabilities, and second, you might discover a useful texture. For example, I'm burning zigzags using the flat of the shader. This creates a soft, irregular burn result. Then I go over the area using the razor edge of the shader, burning zigzags in the same direction that I did with the first layer. On this second patch, I started out like the first one, so zigzags were burned using the flat of the shader. The difference is that I applied the razor edge layer of zigzags in a different direction than the flat of the shader was done. With this patch, I started out using the flat of the shader to burn large, soft, circular motion. Then I reburned over the area using a tighter circular motion burn stroke, but this time I have the pin tip angled up to reduce how much metal is in contact with the wood. In addition to layering different styles of the same burn stroke, also experiment with layering different types of burn strokes. For example, here I'm burning circular motion using the flat of the shader. Then I burn over the area with zigzags. In this last experiment example, I'm burning a series of vertical lines using uniform strokes. The lines vary in width. Afterwards, I go over the patch using circular motion. I will admit that most of my experiments create textures I don't use, but occasionally I discover a very useful one. Controlling focus. Holding the pin tip at a steep angle produces thin, crisp lines. As the angle decreases, the lines get wider and softer looking. Apply that to zigzags. The crisp burn stroke is good for close-up in focus fur. The soft ones could be used for out-of-focus fur. Let's create 3 circles with different focus levels. We will start with the crisp in-focus circle on the left. The key to creating crisp edges is to keep your pen tip in optimal position. This means that the front edge or the toe of the shader is on the inside edge of the circle. The body of the shader is angled over the area you're burning in. This keeps all of the pen tip within the confines of the area that you are burning. Make sure to rotate the board as needed so that the pen tip stays in optimal position when working along the edges. Now let's work on the middle circle with soft edges. For this I am using the flat of the shader and burning on the pencil line. This means that part of the pen tip is touching the wood adjacent to the circle. Or to put it another way, I'm burning a little past the lines of the circle. The important thing is that I don't stray far from the line. I'm keeping the circle close to that pencil line so it maintains that circular shape. When I'm done, you can easily tell it is a circle, but the edges aren't as clearly defined as the first circle. I want the circle to be darker, so I'm repeating the whole process. I turned up the heat setting on my burner for this, and I reburned over the circle using the flat of the shader. The only problem I had was the bottom of the circle where the heel of the shader went too far past the circle edge. To fix this, rotate the board and reburn along that problem edge. The last circle we will work on is the far right one that is out of focus. To create this look, use circular motion as you burn along the pencil line. It is important to make sure you vary how far past the line you burn. The shape of the circle needs to be very vague. This is done by using the flat of the shader to create soft burn strokes. Plus, you need to randomly burn past the edge of the circle. Also, vary how far past the edge of the circle you burn. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you found the information informative and useful. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you next week. Thank you for watching my video. Did you like the video and find the information helpful? If so, please subscribe. That would really help my channel. Well, thank you and have a great day.